The All Black podcast is powered by our official cloud software partner, SAP, helping our teams in black become the best run teams in sport. To listen to this episode and all the All Black podcasts, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. This is the All Blacks podcast.
Kia ora whānau, welcome to episode 2 of the All Black podcast powered by SAP. Big week, it's test week and I'm seriously fizzed because the Irish are here. Last time these two teams met, clash back in Dublin, the Irish knocked us over 29 points to 20. So in preparation for the first test at Eden Park this weekend, we thought we'd talk to one of the great players of the All Black jersey. Welcome to the studio, Richie McCaw.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, it's good to be here.
Mate, we got you up in the 09, we got you in the studio. What are you doing up in the big smoke today?
Well, it's actually been up here for rugby things with obviously the Silver Lake deal with New Zealand Rugby got signed off just recently. Those guys are actually in town, so they're getting around meeting a few people. So I thought it was a good chance to obviously got a little bit involved over the last 12 months with the deal so to meet the guys that are obviously part of the Silver Lake side, which has been great.
Mate, it's awesome to have you involved in that. I think it's great as we sort of go into this new era of rugby. Good fellas, are they? You know, they're pretty excited. I think you mentioned to me beforehand that they're rugby men and they're quite excited to get stuck into this project.
Oh, absolutely. They the lead fella, Simon's a Brit, so you know loves his rugby, and I think they're just excited. You know, obviously it's been quite a long process, but excited about what's ahead. So I think everyone should be excited.
And they're involved in some amazing stuff, aren't they? Like around the world, they're involved in some pretty, significant and pretty exciting projects. So hopefully there's a bunch of things they can bring to the table for us.
Oh, I'm sure they will, and they'll challenge, ways of doing things and look into the future. I think that's the key is years down the track, what is it that we need to do as a game in New Zealand, right from, the young kids playing through to the professional game, how we're going to make it sustainable. And obviously money has a lot to do with that, and they'll have ideas that'll be probably haven't thought of. Yeah,
absolutely. No, it's exciting times. And also, mate, team close to your heart, did you watch the Crusaders in the weekend? I know you were perhaps travelling at the time, but might have found a way to sneak it.
Yeah, I was actually in Japan for a couple of days, and I managed to get to the airport, and before my flight, sat and watched in the lounge, and I think the reflections on it. The first thing is just the fact you had a full Eden Park, a lot of anticipation, not sure who was going to get the job done, and that excitement sort of reminds me of the years that I was lucky enough to play in those games, and but from a Crusaders point of view, she was a pretty clinical display. Yeah. Like they didn't give the Blues any room to wiggle, and got the job done.
Yeah, it was like as we were talking about beforehand. I don't think the Crusaders had too many fans outside of their region. There was definitely a lot of people wanted the Blues to win, but
I'd say everyone outside of the region. To be fair,
yeah, based in the Bay, plenty there. I don't think any mates down there for that week. But like you say, geez, it's sort of that finals pedigree, I suppose, wasn't it? It seemed to be on the big occasion, like you say, full stadium at Eden Park, which was really exciting for the comp. They very much got it right on the day.
Yeah, just I think that there's a few big moments, but certainly that try right on half time when they'd had a bit of pressure on going into the break. Those sort of moments are pretty key, and the weather got a bit average as the game went on, and when you're playing catch up in that sort of rugby, that sort of weather, it's hard to get going, and that was sort of what it looked like, and the Crusaders got their one or two opportunities and managed to nail them. And a couple of the big players, like up front, Sam Whitelock and Scott Barrett, and also, the front row, even the young fellas came up, they had quite an impact, and, that makes it easier for everyone else to play.
And it'll serve all of those players, not just the Crusaders players, but the Blues players. It'll serve them well when going into 3 weeks of really hard test rugby. Like you say, we sort of haven't had that occasion maybe as much in the last couple of years with full stadiums and big pressure environments. What we saw is a 50-50 game. So those guys who did play in that win or loss has to have sort of served them really well.
Yeah, well, I think from a Crusader point of view, those guys having that experience and knowing sort of those sort of approaches to the game, you got to do that in test matches, where it's sort of all on the line. But yeah, the other side of it, sometimes a reminder that no matter what you've done before or last week or throughout the season. If you don't get it right on that day, or you can't get your game going, actually that doesn't mean a lot when the final whistle goes and you haven't got it across the line.
Absolutely. Rich, going to talk to you about your debut, but don't want to go in too cold, so a few warm-up questions before we get into it that we often ask all our guests. First All Black game that you went to, can you remember?
I can. It was 1993, I think, when South Africa came. They played at Carrisbrook. I sat in the Neville Street stand with my father, and I think that was the first Test match I got along to. So
you and Donnie, was it?
Yep, we did. So I know I was 12 at that point, so that was the first time I'd been able to get to All Black match, and obviously South Africa was the first time they've been back in NZ for a long time, so that was pretty cool.
Awesome. Favourite All Black growing up?
I think as a young fella, the 87 through to 90, that sort of era was sort of when I really started taking notice, and I think John Kerwin, I remember the tries he scored in the World Cup. They sort of the bits of that World Cup I sort of remember. But then I started playing around that point, and I was always going to be a forward. And Buck Shelford was the captain, and I just loved his toughness. And so he was the one that I always used to admire. And it was, when the debate around Buck Shelford and Zambrook, I was very much a Buck Shelford man at the time, and he put out a book, and I remember going in the book signed. It was in Dunedin when he was doing a book tour. I think it might have been after he was no longer an All Black, but I remember that I remember getting on the TV news because over there I thought it was pretty cool at the time.
Your first bit of TV coverage.
Yeah. I was it was pretty obvious I was trying to get myself in there. But,
yeah. Mate, God, didn't that blimmin' polarise the nation, bring back Buck and Zinny, this Aucklander, getting into the All Blacks in front of
South
Island. It was.
Yeah.
Those signs, those bring back Buck signs kept going for about 10 years, didn't they? It was amazing.
Yeah.
Slight change of tact. You travel a bit, Rich. You need a bit of downtime. What's been the favourite TV stream of late? I'm always looking for a good recommendation.
I'm not actually. I don't actually get too. I don't watch a lot of TV or try and get too hooked on series. I quite enjoyed the Jack Reacher one.
Yeah.
I enjoy those books, and so I watched that, and I got recommended Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
And I actually found myself, got through the whole first season, and I quite enjoyed the fact that some of the underlying messages around teams and that. You go, actually, it's quite a
it's the most unlikely show, isn't it? Yeah. An American football coach in the UK. I was the same. I was like, someone recommended. I was like, really? Is this? And you watched and you're like, geez, this is actually bloody good.
I actually quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, Richie, 3 guests around for dinner. Who are you inviting, mate?
I actually don't know who it'd be easy. A lot of people go, I'd love to meet so-and-so. And there's a few people like that. I guess from a sporting context, and just purely the people you admire, I always said people like Roger Federer and Tiger Woods, just because of the way they dominated their sport. That's a sporting context. But what I always say is someone I really admired and I loved as a youngster growing up was my grandfather, talking about the war during the Second World War. And he told me a lot of stories he never told anyone else, and he's no longer around. And him and his mates, I wish I got the chance, being a bit older, to sit down and just hear those stories. And I was just intrigued by what they did and what they went through. And if you could sit down and hear all those stories now, man, I think that would be pretty cool. So, it might be a little bit out there, different way of looking at it, but, I just love hearing the courage of those sort of people. And I guess you ask yourself, would you have done something that they'd done if that was put in front of you now?
100%. I had a surrogate grandfather who fought in Papua New Guinea as an Australian guy, and one of his jobs was to go into certain areas with a flamethrower. That was one of his jobs, to go in first with a flamethrower. And I just thought, my God, I wouldn't be able to. I don't think I'd be able to do that, But these guys were asked to do that sort of stuff, and it's amazing.
But I think those sort of values and courage and putting yourself, yourself aside for something bigger than yourself. We're talking about sport here, but they were prepared to do that. Where it wasn't whether you win or lose, it was whether you're going to come home or not. But it was for a bigger good, and that's what I just asked myself. Would I go and volunteer to go and do something like that?
Yeah. And if you had those 3 guys around, what are you cooking? What are you cooking?
I do a reasonable roast.
Yeah. Stick to what you know.
I stick to what I know. I can. I'd rustle up a pretty good roast, and I think those sort of people would appreciate that.
100%.
Yeah.
Mate, you love a challenge. It's been, a really important part of your life after rugby, signing up for a few different things to get you out in the morning, boots on the ground. But I know you've done, was it 2 or 3 Godzillas now?
Well, I've done 3.5.
You've done 3.5.
Well, not even half, but 3. I started 4 of them. Finished 3 of them.
Yeah, talk us through that. The last one, I know it didn't quite. It was a DNF in the end, wasn't it?
But it was. Well, yeah, it was. We actually probably had a multitude of things we didn't quite get right, but it culminated in a teammate getting an ear infection, which, when you got one of those...
Wrong place, wrong time.
And you're 2 days into a 7-day race, you're never going to...
Yeah.
But, I probably wasn't in... I had a bit of a niggly knee, which would have been okay, but it was probably... When he... it was obvious we couldn't carry on, I was sort of like... Maybe it's not such a bad thing.
And you stuck behind, didn't you? A couple of your other teammates carried on and tried to get the job done, but you stayed behind with the teammates to make sure they got out.
Yeah, and in a race like that, you prepare for a whole year, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And then there's a bit of luck that, whether you hurt yourself or get sick or turn up. But there was another team that the same thing had happened. They lost a couple, so they joined up and carried on. So it was good that they were able to do that. But it's just getting to the start line and fresh and in good nick and being able to get through the race is an achievement in itself, let alone whether you're actually trying to race as fast as you against others.
Absolutely. And what's next? You're gonna chuck another one in the calendar? What's the rig like at the moment? Are you you're not getting any younger, Richard, let's be honest. You start doing these crazy things, but you're going to chuck another one in the calendar?
I don't know about the Godzone. The entries are just about to open up. It's a World Championships next year down in Fiordland, so there's a few things that just start to twist the arm. But I missed out on doing the coast to coast this year because the 2-day got I couldn't be run because of COVID, so managed to push the entry out for next year. So I'm going to give that a crack again.
Good man. 148 games for the All Blacks, first All Blacks player to get to 100 tests, World Cup winner in 2011 and 2015. We're not going to talk about any of that today. We're going to go back to your debut against the Irish at Lansdowne Road. Can you remember this? November 17th, 2001, in front of 52,000 fans, just a wet behind the ears 20-year-old Lincoln University student just trying to establish himself. Can you remember, mate, all that time ago? Is it like yesterday?
I can remember it pretty clearly, and I often get asked, what's the most memorable game you had as an All Black, and it's quite hard because all different games, some of the things you talked about and you're able to win tournaments and stuff are hugely special, but the one that sits ahead of the rest is the day you become an All Black, where the dream of growing up actually becomes a reality, and once you've put that jersey on, no one can ever take that away from you again. So it certainly, that's why I always say that was the most special probably time. And I always add on that my last game, 2015, where we won the World Cup, and I still felt like I was playing as good as I had any other day that I'd played. To have the first and last sort of memorable like that was a pretty cool way to remember, I guess, what I did. But, it was certainly a pretty exciting time. But I look back on what I learnt through my career, like, how the hell I even did something that was worthwhile out in the field. I was 20 or whatever, hardly played much first-class rugby. You're sort of amazed.
Well, we'll talk about that. Like, I don't know if you're a real traditional bolter, but you're pretty close to it. I mean, you'd just played, basically, had you played almost no Super Rugby, or maybe 10 minutes or something, and only one full NPC season. Is that right?
Yeah, so 2000, all the All Blacks played pretty much the whole NPC, bar the first 2 or 3 weeks. So I got pulled into the Canterbury team for the first 3 games, I think it was. I got to strip for 1 game and I got 10 minutes for them. So that was my first game. So it was 2000, and pretty much the same thing happened in the Crusaders. I wasn't in the squad, but there was an injury. I got pulled in. I stripped for 2 games and got the last minute or 2 of each of those games. So literally a handful of minutes of Super Rugby. So this was 2001, and then pretty much had a full NPC in 2001 where we had a lot of All Blacks in that team, and we played some amazing rugby. Actually, Steve Hansen just taken over as coach, and we sort of adapted or changed a little bit how we were playing, and using the ball a lot, and it sort of suited our team. And I guess just being able to slot in there beside some pretty established All Blacks was pretty exciting. And I guess because we managed to win that competition, and it was easy to play well because the team was going well. I was lucky enough to get picked for the tour.
And it was you had a really good NPC season. Like you said, you established yourself in number 7 jersey. Had a phenomenal. The team went well, and like you say, the style was awesome under Steve, and you had some good players coming through like Azza and Benny Blair and those sort of boys. But you'd still only played really one full NPC season. You're still 20 years old. When it came to the time to name the All Blacks for end of year tour, did you think you're a chance? Had there been much chatter, like outside of your mates at lunchtime at Lincoln University saying you might be a go? Had anyone given you a tap on the shoulder? Or?
No, I didn't know. But you're right. There was talk. I guess the one thing that happened, there was a change in coaches. John Mitchell and Robbie Deans had taken over.
That was for Smithy, wasn't it? Smithy
so after the Tri-Nations, there was a change, and. So everything was. I don't think any of the All Blacks that had been in there actually really thought they were going to be. They were all probably waiting around to see what changes were going to be made. But certainly there'd been talk about. There was a possibility, and I guess Josh Kronfeld had retired sort of 12 months earlier. Tane Randall had been playing number 7 during the middle of that year. Marty Holler was new to the team, so it wasn't like there was someone that really had the number 7 jersey. That would be an automatic choice. So there was perhaps a slight opening because of that. And but as you say, I hadn't played a lot, so I didn't want to get too ahead of myself. But I still listened to the team being named because there's that minute possibility, I suppose.
Yeah. And talk us through that. Where were you? Like, how did you hear it?
Well, it was only read out on the radio.
Well, that's old school. That's old school.
So we'd played the NPC final the night before, and we'd won it, so we'd had a reasonably good celebration. And my folks were still down the farm. They were staying with some friends, and they came pick me up, and they said, we need to listen to the radio for the All Black team now. And I was okay. And so we all sat around at their place, and actually, I think it was my father had a video camera, pretty presumptuous to be fair, but probably would have got deleted had it not gone that way. But they actually filmed it, and it was sat there and listened, and I was like, wow, we're going to Europe. It's pretty cool,
mate. It's awesome. And like you say, it was a new era. Like John Mitchell and Robbie Deans had taken over from Wayne Smith. They didn't pick Cullen, they didn't pick Wilson, they didn't pick Tane Randall. Names of today, Razor, Crusaders coach, was at 8. Leon McDonald was in the team at 15. Was there, like, even like yourself, I know there was a little bit of chat around, we're giving All Black jerseys away too easily, putting a whole lot of new players in there, like, have these guys earned it? Like, did you hear all that sort of chatter, or were you just like, here we go, I'm on?
Probably didn't hear a lot of it, to be fair. When we were away, it's not like today where smartphones, you can see all the stuff if you want to see it. We didn't really get too much exposure to it, but we had a midweek game against Island A in Belfast as the first game. So there was effectively a 30-man squad, but there was quite a few new faces that played that were on tour that hadn't actually been an All Black. So so there was quite a few of us in the same boat. That were going assembled in Auckland. So it was it wasn't like I was the only one. But I guess on reflection, you sort of see some of the comments and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, okay. I kind of had an inkling, but I didn't really think too much about it. But later, it was brought up and talked about, and I guess as things went on, it got brought up a bit more as. That it wasn't just a one-off sort of game. You came and went up to it. So, but yeah, it was probably some of the reflections. Were fear at the time because I hadn't played a lot. But sort of, I couldn't change the fact you picked, so you just wanted to go and get stuck in.
And mate, first impressions of being an All Black, like you probably got more kit thrown at you than even thrown at you. There were some new guys, which probably made things a little bit more comfortable. Guys like Aaron Major and Ben Blair and guys who are new All Blacks, but also there was Mertz and Lomu and some of the guys. Anton Oliver was the captain. Guys who've been around for a long time. Was it intimidating? Did you just put your head down, mate, and yes sir, no sir?
It was quite helpful. There was quite a few of the Canterbury boys I'd played with in the team, like Ruben Thorne and Scott Robertson, for example, the other two loose forwards I played with in the first test and whatnot. So that made it a little, a little bit more comfortable. But the thing I remember, we went and stayed at the Pounamu, which is sort of the traditional where the All Blacks in the amateur had always stayed, and back in there, and there's. So there was a wee bit of chat about that. We're back to the roots, and then we sort of trained as two 15s, and I was sort of like, this looks like it could be the test team. They hadn't named who was going to be playing, but this is before we even left.
That's Mertz, and that's Jonah Lomu on my team. Yeah,
exactly. And but we the feeling I had is it was great to be named the All Black, given all the kit, and of course that's pretty cool, and ready to jump on a plane to go to the UK and Ireland. But until you get on that field, you could hurt yourself, you could whatever, and never be an All Black. And so it was sort of exciting, but just wanted to get that jersey on and get on the field. And but I think we had 3 or 4 days before we left, and to try and sort out what the team was all about, and figure out. And of course, with new coaches, everyone was in the same boat. Going, well, how are we going to play? What, how do lineouts work? All that sort of stuff. So it was pretty steep learning.
And when you got to Ireland, what was the vibe like? When did you get a little tap on the shoulder that you might be starting in the Test match? Because like you say, there was a game against Ireland A in Belfast on Wednesday. Did you strip for that, or play or not play?
I did strip for it. So the two 15s, they sort of trained together, or we trained against each other before we left, was actually the 15 that was named for the midweek game. I was like, well, does that mean that I'm going to play on Saturday? But I was named on the bench. So obviously it's an All Black jersey, and so part of me really wanted to get out in the field and a chance to play, but the other part of me is like, I really want to play on Saturday as well. And it would be quite cool if your first match was a Test match, but I wasn't picky. I was desperate to get on the field, but I don't think any reserves got on that night against Ireland A. It was just the 15 that got on, started, played the whole game, and so afterwards I was sort of like, well, right now I can sort of focus on hopefully Saturday and playing. And so I think after that game went down to Dublin, and the Test team was named on the Thursday. We had training on Thursday, Friday, and then Test match Saturday. Happy
days. And how did you receive your first Test jersey? Did anyone in particular hand it over to you, or?
If I remember rightly, Andrew Martin was the manager, and we just went to his room, and he presented us the jersey. So we did it one at a time. Went and shook his hand, and I got to say, as a young fellow, he really went out of his way to help out the new boys in the team, and he did a lot of little things. I remember after the game he gave me a match ticket and something else from the game that he goes, this might be something you have as a souvenir of your first Test, and I thought that was pretty thoughtful for the guy. And so I got the jersey, went back, and I remember the first thing I did was put it on. And
big baggy things in those days as well, weren't they? Like huge, hanging off the shoulders.
Yeah. Well, I got my first one, and my 100th one's framed. The 100th one's about half the size, but I was about 10 kilos bigger. Just sort of thinking, a few of those things, like, am I up to?
Yeah, I was going to say, does that, because we see the 148 Test All Black polished version these days. But for that first one, were there some insecurities, some doubts? There
was a few doubts, but I was excited too. And you talked about there was a few questions asked that I knew about without actually getting into too much detail. But I was the same. I didn't want to be a one Test All Black, two Test. Came and realised you're not up to it, and someone else have a crack. I was desperate to show that I belong, but I didn't know what to expect. I played some played against some Test players and I didn't know what it was like to play a Test match, and so I was sort of, man, how's this going to go? What's it all about? And people say, oh, it just goes like that, and it's everything's quicker and faster and more physical. I was like, man, this. I was pretty nervous, but John Mitchell did. He pulled me aside on, I think maybe in the Friday, and he said, how you going? I said, oh, pretty good. He goes, like, I realise you're going to be, probably a little bit anxious and stuff like that. He said, I picked you because you're the best in the country. Nice. And I was sort of like, ooh, okay.
Thanks, Mitch.
That's pretty cool. And he goes, just go out there and do what you've been doing. I was like, oh, I really appreciate that. And so that relaxed me a little bit, but, come game day, it was a few nerves.
Because rugby is different then, like in terms of just how many people are supporting the team, you're scouting of opposition, knowing about other players, even how you're going to play the game. Like, what was it in the lead up? Were you going to play, a little bit like the NPC? You're going to play a really open game. You sort of pick some players and maybe allow you to do that. And you're going to keep that same NPC role. Did you practice the haka, Rich, in the mirror a few times to get ready for that?
It was. I can't remember sort of how we were, but some of the things we'd done in Canterbury were a little bit new, but we only had a week together. Yeah. So it was pretty much trying to get the basics right. But from my point of view, it didn't really change a lot how you wanted to play. It was just sort of get stuck in, and things like the breakdown don't change and whatever. So there wasn't probably. It was just making sure you fit it in and got your role right. The haka, I was making sure I got that right. Greg Feek he led it.
Did he? Yeah.
I think he was more nervous about leading that than he was playing the game. We always give him a bit of stick. It was the fastest haka ever, but didn't stuff that up, so that was good.
Yeah, got the job done, and then kick off. You got some good early touches, and you're into it. And then once it starts, is it exactly that? Is the first 20 minutes gone in the flash of eye? Because when you look back, they started well. They started really well, and I sort of wanted to ask you, what do you know of the Irish? They had, when I look at it now, Keith Wood and Brian O'Driscoll, Malcolm O'Kelly, some pretty big names for back then, 52,000 people. But at the time, we'd still never lost to Ireland. And did you even think much about the opposition, or you're very much just a young fella who was rip shit and busting into it?
I knew the All Blacks never lost to Ireland. I certainly didn't want to be the first on my first day that happened. But to be fair, there wasn't a heap of analysis like there is today. Like, I knew some of those names and whatever that we're going to be playing against, but I was just probably more focused on how, what I needed to do to, regardless of who I was playing against. But you're right, they started extremely well. But I do remember that first whistle went when the kick-off. I think it was Mertz kicked off, and I was running. And I remember in my mind, I was like, wow, at least I'm an All Black now. It doesn't matter what happened. And I think if I remember rightly, the first time I got the ball, I dropped it. And I was like, oh, that's a hell of a start. And probably got penalised at some point at the start. And but, once sort of 20 minutes was gone just like that, and then started to get into the game. But the bit I remember, it was early in the second half they scored, and I was like, the crowd was
that
going
made it
crazy.
21-7 just after half time, and they're like, probably thinking it's on here.
This shouldn't be happening. You're playing for the All Blacks here, and the All Blacks don't lose to Ireland. But but from about that point on, I remember we had a scrum and Jonah scored, and it was so easy how he scored. It was just might have been he cut with the 12.
Yeah,
hardly anyone touched him and under the sticks, and that was kind of the change. But up until that point, it was a good old wrestle. Yeah,
and there's speak a little bit about Jonah. Rest in peace, the big man. But he was a special man, eh? Like, there was. I know you only got to play a little bit of rugby with them right at the start of your career, and didn't play heaps beyond that point. But like you say, it's still a game of Test rugby. Not many people can make tries like that just look that easy. Look like we're just for a little 30-second period we're playing under nines again. That was the sort of man he was, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, go back to we played. I first got to play against them in the NPC, where we had a shield game against Wellington, which we only just snuck in at the end. But
that was a hell of a ding dong, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was. But I was perhaps growing up at school, you saw a lot of people have real trouble tackling the big man, and I was like, surely you can just get around the ankles, and knock him over. I had 2 goes at tackling him that day, and both times didn't go so good. And
0-2.
Yeah. But so to have him in your team, but I think his star factor in Europe and in the UK and Ireland, like he was just huge, massive following. And I just remember one of the trainings we went to, got off the bus, and there was a heap of people knew we were training. And as I was walking towards the ground, a huge crowd came running at me. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And they just kept going past. I turned around, it was Jonah walking behind me. He just got mobbed everywhere we went. And, having a guy like that in your team, and even I look forward to I think it was the 3rd test in Argentina where things weren't going so good, and a try he scored from nowhere, like he was the difference. And imagine if he'd just, and this is what everyone, I guess, so sad about, if he had that, been able to have done or shown his full potential without a sickness, man. He could have been even better than what we saw. Yeah,
it does. It puts him in perspective, doesn't it, what a special athlete he was when he was running on 50, 60, 70% some of the time. Like it was phenomenal.
But it was always about the jersey and the team being ahead of him, and he just wanted to do what, and that's something I admired. He never complained, and,
It's got the job done. Mate, by the time the full-time whistle blew, it was 40 points to 29, and Richie McCaw was player of the day. Like, did you, when you kind of got to the end of the work, did you, I know you don't think about whether I'm player of the day or not, but like, did you think, shit, that was a good first one? You're pretty happy with your work? And
well, I thought I played all right, probably bar the first few minutes, but there was a line out just maybe a minute or two before the end, and somehow I heard over the speaker that they announced man of the match. I thought, geez, that might have been my name.
There we go.
I was like, do I play that well?
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, well, I'll take it, regardless. But it was, maybe they felt sorry for the new kid, didn't disgrace himself. But it was pretty cool. And I guess having that, but then actually the thing that came later was when we got our caps at a post-match dinner. That was the real special part. And there was Dave Hewitt and Aaron Major also test debut that day, and that's the real memory I have of after that game was getting your cap and
so you had a proper aftermatch with a ceremony, and the guys who were new All Blacks got to go up and receive their cap, because they don't do post matches as much as they used to, do they?
Not like that. Not like maybe in the north they still have that tradition. Play afternoon games. But yeah, we went to a dinner, and I didn't really understand the capping side of things, but we got caught up on stage and cap on, and the Irish were pretty good, because apparently the tradition is anyone that has got a cap, if someone comes over with a drink, you've got to have a drink with them. So there's 30 odd Irish guys, 15 or 30 All Black guys, so made for a pretty long night.
Yeah, totally. Oh mate, but like you say, there's been plenty in the middle between the first and the last, but it's one that obviously that sticks with you, no matter how long in the tooth you get. It's in a memory that's going to stay with you. And like, while I don't know actually what would be most special to you, but to make your debut in a bit of a rugby cathedral, like one of the real traditional grounds. They don't play in that ground anymore. It's a different ground now. Lansdowne Road, 52,000 people, and from my experiences, which are nothing like yours, they are wonderful rugby people. Rugby in Ireland it's almost the sport that brings the whole nation together, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a few things in there. The thing I remember, one of the things that sticks out for every time I got to play in Ireland is when the goal kicker takes a kick goal, there's dead silence.
Yeah.
The odd idiot Kiwi yell out something, but it's quite eerie.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think's, the respect side of things for that is pretty awesome. The other thing at the old Lansdowne Road is the train used to run under the stand, and when we were warming up, obviously the train rolled in or rolled past, and I thought the whole place was falling down, when we were getting changed, as the train rumbled pretty much just by the back wall of the changing room. So, but it was an old stadium at the time, but it's obviously been upgraded now to pretty cool, the Viva Stadium, whatever it's called. But to have got to play at that ground, got to play there a couple of times. It was pretty amazing.
I was going to say, and it may come to you, but the whole, like you sort of said a little bit at the start, like you're just a young fella there tearing in versus to how you're prepared for your last game. Like, do you almost look back and think, like, you almost said that, like, geez, how did I get through that game? You're probably became so meticulous and put so much energy into your performance with all the different bits and pieces you do, whether it be analysis, some of the off-the-field work, scouting other teams, how you were playing yourself. You were probably still just a raw young fella back then, weren't you, who just go around and literally put yourself in the ground by working that hard?
Well, I guess you have some things you could do really well, and I guess around the breakdown at the time, that was something that I was able to have an impact on. Probably the rest of the game needed a fair bit of work, but that's what I guess as time went on, you're able to do that. But just shows you if you can really have the right attitude and enthusiasm that goes with some of the skills you've got, and really use them to your advantage, you can actually have an impact. And I guess as a youngster, and that year, and maybe it was around a lot of those sort of attributes that got you, prepared to learn, prepared to work hard, prepared to get better, not just, I've arrived now, is actually that's only the start. And I guess that was the sort of thing that was drummed into me, is that, there's going to be other people that are all looking to get better, so when you're there, you want to keep getting better. And the thing that happened was, we had 3 tests, I got to play in those 3, but went back and it was pretty much start again. You're back to actually playing a full Super Rugby. I'd never gone through a full campaign, and you had to earn your spot again. And I didn't want to be one of those players that, went on a tour, played a game, and then you went back and thought you were better than you were. And
on a bottle cap question,
So you did right. So that, I guess the motivation there, I had a little taste, and I was like, man, I just want some more of that. And I needed to make sure the things you did back in playing for the Crusaders established that. The thing I was going to say before, the unique thing about Ireland that rugby has is it unites Northern Ireland and Ireland in one, which is unique for everything else. And I didn't understand all that until you've been there a few times, and that's what the power of sport can actually do. And just understanding, we got to play in Belfast against Ireland A, the different outlooks and things of that. That was quite an eye opener as a youngster. We got taken up in Belfast, up the falls and the Shankill, and just understanding all that history that was there is like, man. And it actually was in 2008 we got to play at Croke Park while Lansdowne Road has been.
Which say why that was significant?
Well, Croke Park is where they play the traditional Gaelic football. And obviously rugby was more of an English sport, so it was sort of that symbolised,
tension, wasn't there? Yeah.
And so that rugby was now being played at
the home of their national,
and so that was quite a big deal. And we had a bit of we got explained to us a bit of things around that. Like the one end of the stadium is not built out because of the history about something that had happened. I forget totally what it was, so I don't want to get it wrong. But man, it was all of a sudden.
There's a bit of history in this town. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Awesome occasion to be a part of, and an awesome. It's a pretty cool first test experience, isn't it, for a young fella that went on to have a great career.
The Irish, I have a lot of time for the Irish around how they approach life, but certainly the rugby and the rugby people, really they love the game just like we do. The one memory I do have, I played against David Wallace, who after the game he came up, and I thought I wanted to swap a jersey. There's no way I was going to swap. He said, no, I understand you don't want to swap it, but here's my jersey for you to
keep,
which I thought was pretty cool.
Geez, that's outstanding, isn't it?
Yeah.
How good. SAP are all about best run teams. Our partners at SAP pride themselves on powering the best run teams. So we're going to ask our guest Richie today to help identify some success factors on and off the pitch. So a few questions, Rich, because you've been in a few good teams since then. In your time, mate, with the All Blacks, was there any one or two common factors for success that stand out from NPC Crusaders when you're a 20-year-old through to when you hung up the boots in 2015 with the All Blacks?
I think one of the things, and the teams that's successful, people talk around, they have a tight bond or a culture that they play for each other, and it's because they want to see the team be successful before they take any personal accolades. And I think the Crusaders that I was involved in, and we were successful, and the All Blacks, people were prepared to put the team ahead of themselves, and if you're prepared to do that, you'll help people, you'll do the right thing, and I think if you have that sort of attitude, then the things that you need to get right to execute whatever it is on the field and stuff, they become a lot easier. Whereas if you have people sort of pulling their own directions because they want it for themselves, that's when you don't see that until it gets tough. So the teams I've been in that have been pretty tight in that regard have been successful.
Awesome, mate. You had such a long career, and I imagine sometimes it's probably easy to stand still a little bit. Like, what did you do to make sure you continued to grow as a player through a effectively a 15-year professional rugby career?
Well, the moment you think you've made it and you're as good as you're going to be, I think it's probably time to move on and do something else. And if you sit there and think you're perfect, then I think you're in trouble. And you see it at the start of, and I said it before, when you become an All Black, you think, oh, I'm the finished article, and that's when people just plateau and they start to lack the desire and motivation or whatever it is, and then they start to struggle because, but you know, keep reassessing where you're at and what you need to be better at, and that was the drive for me, and especially when you come into a leadership position, if you're expecting new players or younger players to get better at what they do, they're looking at me or the senior bloke. Are they getting better? What are they doing? And so that was always my attitude. You need to lead the way to keep working on the things that you can get better at. Because I was always, probably at a fault sometimes. You look at all the things that you can't do rather than all the things you can, and sometimes you need to, not get down on yourself. But if you're not keep looking at those things, you ain't going to get better, and you'll miss a trick. So even when I finished, I was like, I know there's things that I if I'd had more time or whatever, I could have been better at. But
could have kicked the goals, mate. Could have
well, I think it was probably one step too far, to be fair. But I think it comes down to how good you want to be, and if you're just happy being an All Black and putting the jersey on, you're not going to have that drive or desire. So
And mate, in the world, in the team and an individual, is there any particular person or team that you admire as being high performing? Is there any that you look at and think, I'd love to know what makes them tick? Or maybe you've been lucky enough to see inside a few teams and see what makes them tick?
Probably from an individual point of view, put aside the off course things, like but Tiger Woods in his prime, probably. The mental side of the game, when he was in with a sniff, the amount of people that crumbled around him because he was there, and that because he had to deliver when it really counted, and when people, that's the thing I really admire about sportsmen is when it really counts in the big days, they can really deliver. I mentioned Federer earlier; he's another one, and you probably put the three big guys that have been around for a long time in that category, but you just admire the fact that they're just relentless. They just never just go, oh, I've sort of done enough. They're always striving to be better, and that's something I really admire. And I guess when you reflect on your own career, that's the sort of way you never want to turn up and just sort of go, oh, well, he's sort of done his past his bit. He's just happy being here. Actually, you always want to be getting better. And so people, if they're going to knock you off, they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I love it. Big game on Saturday, Rich. Firstly, you're heading along to Eden Park to watch the All Blacks play on, and first Test match of the year. Are you there?
I am. I'm really looking forward to it. Actually, we've got got a few of the guys I played with coming in for something get together on the Friday night before, so that'd be pretty cool. And I'm really looking forward to it. Like, I don't think we've had this sort of anticipation for a June series in a long time.
Absolutely, and like. You kept a clean sheet. You did manage to keep a clean sheet against the Irish in your playing days.
Pretty close a couple of times.
Well, I was going to say that, mate. Like you're, was it Christchurch 2012, Dublin 2013? Like what a game of footy that was. Like even though you managed to just get over the line in those matches, you must have appreciated, when you did hang up the boots, that they were coming, that they were getting, every time you played them, they seemed to just be getting that little bit better, didn't they?
Yeah. I'll just look at my whole career. We talked about the first game where there was, it was a bit on the line there for a while. 2002, they came to New Zealand. It was probably, we were never really in danger of losing, but it was a close game in Carisbrook, first test up. You talk about 2012, 2013, they were down pretty close sort of games. So a few history of, and I think sometimes from afar they go, oh, the All Blacks will beat Ireland. But, geez, if you didn't get it right, you could easily got knocked over, and they've shown in the last wee while, they're more capable. And I guess when you start to have that belief, it's like a lot of things. Once you get across the line, once you know these guys aren't unbeatable. And with what happened last year, I'm sure the Irish will come down here with an opportunity that they see. And but I know the All Blacks will be hurting after what happened last year, and they'll be just you're going to got to wait 6 months to get the jersey back on to put a better memory in the bank. It's a good opportunity.
Mate, final question. Anything you want to see from the boys this weekend? I know you've done it so many times, but that first Test match of the year is probably always a difficult, well, not a difficult one, but you got to blow off the cobwebs and get the team together, decide how you're going to do things. You've always got maybe a few new players have been picked, etc., etc. But is there a couple of things in general you'd love to see from the lads? The Garden of Eden's been a bit of a fortress for us, and hope it is again.
Yeah, I think one of the things I always remembered going into the June series when you play the Northern Hemisphere. The game's slightly different playing the Northern Hemisphere where, compared to Super Rugby, where the contact area and the breakdown just seems to have a different edge to it.
Yep.
And no matter, even if you're playing well, you go in there, the first 20 minutes of that first test is always like, wow, that's right, I remember what this is all about, And you've got to meet that. You've got to, otherwise that's where you can't get your game going. The times we've struggled to get going, you put it down to a bit of rust, not being together, but it's often because you haven't got that contact area right. And, so if that was one thing you'd focus on is making sure that those things are done right so you can get some ball. So, the talent we've got in the All Blacks as good as anyone, and you get some nice ball and make some good decisions. Hopefully we can see that.
Mate, thank you so much. I know you got a busy day of the other side of rugby up in Auckland today, so appreciate you coming in, doing an early one with us. It's awesome. I'm very, very excited about the game at Eden Park on the 2nd of July. Hope the All Blacks can go well, and appreciate you coming in and giving me an insight to your first game against Ireland back in 2001. Cheers, mate.
Pleasure.
The All Blacks podcast is powered by our official cloud software partner, SAP, helping our teams in black be the best run in sports. Hosted by Rob Dunne in the Hargrave Street studio. Produced by Carl Thompson from Blue and Ginge, the podcast producers. Video editing by Mac Leesburg, graphics by Western Design, content advising from Andy Burt, and commercial manager for the podcast is Valeska Hoth. Follow the All Blacks podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere you get your podcasts.